Okay, but first, I'm babysitting this week, or rather, the next couple of days, because Allie and her sister Molly are at a Shania Twain concert, so I'm taking care of Theo, Molly's dog, and of course, Sadie, Allie and I's dog, and Sadie and Theo are best friends. But anyway, so bees. Let's talk about bees. A couple of weeks ago, Allie and I actually had an infestation here at our house. So, right outside this window is our AC unit. And what happened, we had a bee problem. We had a lot of bees that were obviously attacking us whenever we went outside. You can hear Theo right here. Hey, Theo. So, yeah, we had a lot of bees attacking us. And I was like, hey, how do I get rid of these? Maybe that's happened to you before. And so I did something stupid. I sprayed the bees to try to kill them. And literally, as soon as I did that, I thought that was dumb because one of my bosses at work, her husband actually rescues bees. So basically, what he does, he goes and gets bees that are in like a swarm like that, collects them, puts them in a hive, and helps make honey. And so essentially, I called him up. He came out, rescued the bees, took them. Super cool. We had so many bees, which in the video, you'll get to see a clip in just a little bit. So the episode today on the Farm Traveler podcast is with a guy named Matthew, and he is from Walk in the Woods Apiary, which is up here in Northwest Florida. So essentially, I asked Matthew like how he got started with his beekeeping business, if he bought the bees, if he started out like collecting swarms, and really what got him interested in beekeeping. So it was really neat, and I didn't know that so many people in beekeeping actually start off by rescuing hives and starting it that way. Kind of cool. So check out this clip of Matthew and I talking about his start, and also he and I talk about when I got the bees rescued just outside the window. Check it out. What was your introduction to bees? Like, was there like a super cool moment or something? Like, what started the whole apiary idea with you?
Well, the very, very first time I ever saw a hive, my stepfather had 5, 10 hives back when I was in college. I would come and visit. I never actually looked inside the hives or really had any interaction. I actually had zero interest back then. I just was like, oh, he's got
Okay.
bees. And he lent me a book. I can't remember the name of it, but it was an older beekeeping book and it was showing the history of beekeeping. And I was just skimming through it. And that kind of sparked, that actually is where the interest was sort of sparked. But what really got me into it is I had just moved here and I
Mm.
needed a job. And my dad just happened to be friends with the owner's son of a local apiary. It's like 2 miles down the road, and they're huge. They run like 8,000 hives. They run them over between Michigan and Florida. And I was like, oh, cool. You know, I kind of knew I wanted to do something in agriculture. I was sort of post
Yeah.
college trying to figure out what I wanted. And I just got that job, and they actually only hired me to extract the honey, not even do anything with bees in the very beginning. But I was working beside this retired state bee inspector. He had like 17 years as a state inspector, and he would just fill my mind with all these cool things. Oh, we could be making this much money off this many hives. Look at all this honey. There's 1,000, gallons of honey out there. It's worth this much. And that was like, wow, okay, you could maybe make a living doing this. And then I started learning more about bees, and I got more interested. So it was really that job that really got me into it. And I got my first beehive while I was there. It was a swarm that was hanging from a tree when we were out working some bee yards. Bees just swarm. That's how they reproduce.
Mhm.
And I caught that and took it home and didn't ask my boss. I did it on the clock. And I think I used one of his old boxes too. They had thrown in the burn pile. And I just tinkered with that hive over time and slowly acquired more swarms. And that's how we got started. And I don't know what it was, but there was it was like a little switch kind of flipped on in my brain when I started getting around bees that it was like,
Mhm.
oh, this is what I want to do with my life. Like this is like my passion. It just became like my entire world. I just became obsessed with it. I would study and read and watch videos all day. I'd work all day and I'd come home and watch like YouTube videos and read books at night. I was like obsessive compulsive about it. And that switch has never turned off. I've never lost that passion. So it's just really consumed my life in good and bad ways. Sometimes you get too much into your passion, everything else sort of kind of falls to the wayside. But we are where we are now because I've been applying that process for the last 6 years, I guess.
So, what was it about bees and I mean beekeeping that really like clicked with you?
It was like I remember in the beginning, it was like magic or something. I
Okay.
can always like the way the bees just hang out the hive, the way they were sort of just swaying a little bit in the wind, that they were making this. I believe they're the only insect that produces food that humans consume. And I was like, this insect's making this delicious like ingredient that that never expires, that lasts for thousands of years. Right? They've dug up like Egyptian mummies and cracked open the sarcophagi and like found crystallized honey and just spread it on the bread and ate it. And it was just fine. So I
Crazy, yeah.
it is. It's just it was very magical trying to learn about all the intricate details of beekeeping, and the farm that I had started on, they raised their own queens too, and then that was like
Hmm.
even more special. They were making this one specific type of bee that was so integral, so important to the whole beehive, and I don't know. That's all I can describe it. It was like magic. It just kind of hooked me, and and now I enjoy it also as running as a business. It's paying my bills. I really appreciate that, but there's still something so special about bees, and I find that people who don't even really want to keep bees, they also find bees pretty interesting. Everybody that I can be outside working and people constantly stop, pull off, the side of the road, and they don't get too close. They're scared of getting
Oh
stung,
yeah, you got to
but
be
they
careful.
take, yeah, they want to take pictures. They want to learn some cool bee facts, and so there's a lot of interest. And I think definitely in our country, there's a lot of kind of in the social media sort of presence. There's this whole like save the bees mentality. Everybody kind of
Yeah.
has that in their head that the bees are disappearing and we have to save them. We have to help them. And people will just stop me. They're like, "Oh, you're a beekeeper. That's so great. Thank you for saving the bees and all this stuff." And there's more to it than that. That's definitely the big, broad, general. Bees are not necessarily disappearing in a commercial environment. They're disappearing in the wild. But that's a whole different topic. So I don't know. I love everything about it. I it's just my life. It's all I do 7 days a week. I've been working. I spent 5 years working for two other beekeepers
Mhm.
while I was starting up my own business. So I literally was doing bees like day and night, 7 days a week for like the last 6 years almost.
So when you were starting this business, you were talking about swarms earlier. Like, do you go out and buy hives from people, or if somebody has like a swarm in their backyard, do you go get them and then you build your hives off of that?
That's what I did, the swarms. That's how I got
Okay.
started. I've never purchased any hives ever. We bought some queens to kind of bring in different genetic traits to our apiary and to reduce inbreeding. But I was very lucky in that I've worked on two large commercial apiaries that were running thousands of hives. So it was not uncommon for me to go out there and catch five swarms in a day, and I
Oh
could bring
wow.
those back. Yeah, it was very good. And a swarm's probably $100 worth of bees, so it was a nice little increase that I didn't have to pay for. And in the very beginning of beekeeping, you're going to kill most of your bees because it's just tough to keep them alive. And even with me working around these guys that had decades of experience all day, I still killed the majority of the hives, I'm sure, those first few years, but I was able to replace them with the swarms. And we did do a little business where we would try and go and do cutouts for people who had swarms under their
Hmm.
house or in a tree or something. And I didn't like it as much because they usually don't survive the removal process, and it's sometimes it's a long, several-hour job, and it's not very nice. Which is why most beekeepers they charge several $100s for those kind of services.
Oh, 100%. So one of my
Yep.
coworkers actually, her husband does this, like kind of beekeeping on the side a little bit, and he does a lot of extraction. And my wife and I, we noticed we had a lot over by our air conditioner, and we called him, he came up, and we're like the water hookup is for our irrigation system. They had formed a huge swarm, so he came out and got
Mhm.
them, and we watched him for like 30 minutes, and it was wild. Like we watched him like remove the honeycombs, look for the queen and find them, and then his wife was telling my coworker was telling me a story where there was a house over near 30A here in Florida, and they had a huge swarm on like the third story. And he was like, "Yeah, I can't do it. You're going to need like an expert crew to come in here." So that's a crazy part of like beekeeping that people don't
Yeah.
really realize, like going into homes and like getting them out of the homes.
Yeah, I mean, there's during spring, like our swarming season over here, I get a phone call like every single day. I even have it on our website. Hey, I don't do these removals, and they still call. Actually, a lady called me just a few hours ago in Panama City, I think, and there was a swarm in a tree, and she wanted to cut the tree down and save the bees, which is really hard to do. When that tree hits the
Yeah.
ground, most of the hives are going to be smashed. And I had to explain that, and if they're not beekeepers, I appreciate the sentiment. They want to save the bees, and that's great, but they don't understand that it's so hard to do that removal process, and that's why we charge, and that the bees honestly don't always survive. And if you're doing bees commercially, you don't know what kind of pests and diseases you're bringing in from that hive into your own apiary. There's a lot of risk involved, and I had to kind of explain that to her, and she was very sad, and I was like, you're probably
Mm.
not going to save those bees because Yeah, I don't know. You would have to like cut the tree down in like chunks and sections and work to the hive and scrape the comb out. And yeah, that it sounded like a nightmare.
So yeah, super cool. I did not know that a lot of people rescue bees and then they start a beekeeping business, and I thought that was really neat. I'm gonna try to visit Matthew in a couple of weeks. I will link everything for them down below in the description of this video. And he said that they're gonna start a YouTube channel very soon. So if you're here on YouTube, obviously, go give them a follow. Once they're up, I'll link all that stuff below. But yeah, if you like the video, click like. If you like this new format of like a quick little introduction, talking about the subject, and then doing a clip of the interview, let me know. Might try to do this a little bit more. Might try to include Theo and Sadie a little bit more too, because algorithm loves puppies and dogs. So I think we'll do that. All right, thanks for watching. See you next week.